Iran as a superpower within the region is a threat. And we have to not forget, okay, it's also a game that's being played. It's a very big game that's being played from Israel's side and from Iran's side as well.
They have attacked 8 to 9 countries in the entire region. Oh, Iran is so suppressive. Women don't have the freedom to dress as they want to dress.
Why the Iranian people who have wanted democracy since before the Iranian Revolution have been denied that by none other than those Western powers that are now denouncing Iran for being autocratic. The revolution happens. And on what year?
1979,
In what
what many
year?
people are not aware, 1979, in what year? What happened in that year?
What year Hijri? That's
Ah,
1400.
Bismillah, salatu wasalam, ala Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Now, we keep hearing Iran is a threat. Iran is a problem. We have to attack Iran. Israel is insecure. Iran's problem is Israel. Iran is a threat for the entire region and for the entire world. The question is, have you seen Iran attacking countries in the last couple of years? And how many have you seen being attacked by Iran? Whereas, if you contrast it to Israel, I'm sure that we have seen several countries being attacked by Israel.
There is a hidden history, one that has been erased, misrepresented, and forgotten. A history that holds the true identity of millions of Muslims worldwide. The question is, do you really know who you are? And do you know the legacy that Islam has left behind in the world? Assalamu alaikum, my name is Dr. Stef Keris. For over 25 years, I've been uncovering and teaching the lost history of Islam, the contributions, the struggles, and the legacy often hidden from us. But I wasn't always aware of this reality myself. Raised in Germany with a distorted history, I questioned what I was taught. Researching changed my life. Islam wasn't a threat. It was a civilization of enlightenment and justice. I embraced the faith in 1992 and dedicated my life to reviving our forgotten past. Today, millions of Muslims are disconnected from their history, made to feel like outsiders. If we don't reclaim our narrative, who will? That's why I created this free Skool community where Muslims unite to rediscover their identity through history. Inside you'll find exclusive documentaries on Islam's lost heritage, authentic historical sources that challenge false narratives, a global network of like-minded Muslims. This isn't just another school. It's a movement for Islam, and it's 100% free. No barriers, just the truth. Click the join button and join us today. Let's reclaim our legacy before it's erased for good.
Question is, why do we keep hearing that Iran is a problem and Iran's regime is a problem and the ideology is an issue? So what's going on here? This is some questions we're going to answer today, inshallah.
Iran as a superpower within the region is a threat. A superpower that's not under the thumb of the US or UK or France. This is a superpower within the Middle Eastern region that is not under any other foreign power's thumb. That is why it is a threat to Israel. It's as simple as that, among many other things, but that's one of the reasons. And as we have seen, and as we will see, there is a backing of the state of Israel by other foreign sovereign states.
Let's be clear, it's obviously the Western countries, right?
Yes,
the US,
exactly.
specifically the US, right? Yes.
Exactly. They are back. It is backed by these states, and they, for some reason, for one reason or another, are trying to push forward the agenda of Israel. So, and Iran, doesn't matter how far away, it doesn't matter how seemingly unaggressive it is to Israel, the point of it being not submitting to Israel or its allies makes it already a threat. So, and we have to not forget, okay, it's also a game that's being played. It's a very big game that's being played from Israel's side and from Iran's side as well. And that is something to also keep in mind that it's not so black and white like, oh, poor Iran, they're being attacked and Israel is going to attack them, blah, blah, blah. But also on the other side, oh, poor Israel, oh no, we have Iran there, they're undemocratic, they are horrible autocratic monsters that is going to take over poor tiny Israel, who is so democratic, right? And so we have to realize that.
I mean, we
And
know that the policy of Israel has always been playing the victim game. We know
yeah,
that
it works. So it works.
they attack everybody, but they are the ones who have a problem. They have attacked 8 to 9 countries in the entire region. Some of them even the same time. I mean, 7 at once, as we know that time with Qatar, with Lebanon, with Syria. So they keep attacking countries, Iran as well. But they turn it that these countries are actually the problem, although they are the ones attacking. Now, they would, of course, say, yeah, but don't forget the proxy wars in the Middle East. Hezbollah, for example, is supported by by Iran. The Shia elements that are in many countries are supported by Iran, seeing that Iran is a mainly Shiite reigned country. So that is why we attack Iran, because everything comes from there. It's a question, of course, if this is true. And it's a question also if the elements are that strong that you need to attack Iran because Iran is a problem and a threat. Next to this
It,
one, of course, there's the hypocrisy of the West. The hypocrisy of the West. We have seen the West keep saying, for example, here in the UK or in Europe in general, we see that people say they're talking about women's rights. Okay, they keep talking about, oh, Iran is so suppressive, women don't have the freedom to dress as they want to dress. But what they actually say is they don't want women to wear hijabs, okay, here in the West. So if now Iran turned around and said, like Turkey was as when it was very secular, especially before President Erdogan, of course, when women were not allowed to work in as administrative forces or go to university or to schools or public offices, they were not allowed to wear hijabs. That was okay, seemingly. At that time, everything was okay, everything was cool. But the other way around, when you force on women the hijab, which they say they do in Iran. And by the way, I've never been to Iran, but I've seen videos, I have seen street scenes of Tehran where I've seen women without hijab. Or the hijabs that they're wearing are basically barely worn, to be honest. I mean, there are barely any hijabs there. So I don't know how true this all is, what we hear here. And if this is the main reason for the West to attack Iran because of women's rights. It's really a big question mark. I put that in.
that's never the reason. That's never the reason for anything. It's always there's an agenda, and that has to do with economic or political or strategic gain. These reasons they attach to it of human rights and women's rights are just the
Excuse.
the excuse, the coating on the outside, the very thin coating on the outside of what they actually want. So that should not even be considered as something that is on the agenda of actually important to try and achieve. Because on the agenda, supposedly, of the West is the democratization of the world, right? As democracy is the best and standard,
Right.
the standard of political system. Now, if that is the case, then explain to me why the Iranian people who have wanted democracy since before the Iranian Revolution have been denied that by none other than those Western powers that are now denouncing Iran for being autocratic. Okay? And next to the
Because
fact
they're
of,
hypocrites.
yeah,
That's
they
it.
are exactly. And that's something to be made clear, and that's something to put forward as well, because that will help us understand Iran as a nation. Okay, so let's just go back. Let's rewind a little bit to before the revolution, because that context is important for understanding the revolution and afterwards. So before the revolution, right, there is a ruler considered or named the Shah, okay, which could be translated loosely as emperor. Now, this ruler There were many dynasties that would have this position, but the latest dynasty that's important to understanding this whole situation is the Qajar dynasty. Okay, one of the last rulers of the Qajar dynasty around the late 1800s, the early 1900s, they, because of the push of the people, specifically the wealthier part of the population, so merchants and the clergy, but not just them, the average person as well, they pushed that leader of theirs, that dynastical, monarchical leader, to be more democratic. And that was a 5-year struggle. Okay, not just against their ruler. This is a 5-year struggle against their ruler who has the support of the British. Okay, and they set up something called a majlis, which is very similar to what we would call a parliament. Okay, very similar to that. So limiting the ruler's power. Now, one of the reasons for that is the British wanting to establish an oil monopoly, wanting to acquire resources of oil. They took their gaze towards Iran, and they found, with the help of the Shah of that time, they found oil fields and they were able to harvest it. And this Shah agreed with them 84-16 split. So for the Brits, every $100 of profit would $84 would go to them, and 16 would go straight to the Shah. So this is one of the core reasons for this constitutional revolution, they call it, that the Shah was very corrupt. Okay, so we have that, and we have this move towards a democratic type of system. Okay, as
Now,
foundation of democracy.
finally, there is a democratic change.
Yes.
People vote and they elect who? They elect a certain person called Mohammed Mossadegh. He has become basically the first prime minister, or the first elected prime minister of Iran. Okay, and that happened in 1951 until 1953. So there he was. There was the democratic elections. People elected him. He was there. We should all be happy, right? The Iranians should be happy. The Brits should be happy. But how can they be happy? They're the ones, by the way, just to grab the point that you had before. It was Britain that established basically the petroleum industry in Iran in 1913. 1930, the beginning of the 20th century, which you mentioned before. So in 1913, the Anglo-Persian oil company APOC or AIOC was established, okay, by the British, okay, which went into the deal that you mentioned before, that British Petroleum, the BP that still exists nowadays, by the way, BP gets, a very high amount out of that. They are the ones who are actually gaining more out of the oil industry, and most probably also the ruler of the time of Iran, getting, of course, his share. The people get nothing or very, very, very little. Okay, so there we go. We have Mossadegh. He comes. He's democratically elected. No, we should be all happy. But what happens? He goes against the interests of the British that time. He actually wants to nationalize, or he does nationalize the industry, the oil industry. And that is a problem, of course. So now suddenly democracy is not good enough now. So now we don't want to support him because obviously he cannot nationalize the oil industry because it belongs to us and it will go against our own interest, right? So now, 1953, a coup happens, a coup d'etat, supported by who? By the CIA and MI6. This is all known. This is not some kind of conspiracy theory or something. This is something you can find online if you want to, okay? So they overthrow Mossadegh and put who? The last Shah, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who is the last one whom they put to power, okay?
Right before.
He is an absolute monarch. He is a tyrant. He is absolutely what the Americans want him to be.
Exactly.
In contrast to what they say that they want him to be, a democracy and democratic ruler and all this stuff. And this is where the hypocrisy comes in. So what happens there? The US gains profits of the oil production of up to 40%. Up to 40% of the oil production of the country the gains go to the US this time, okay? So politically and economically, Iran is under US influence, okay? With having the Shah Pahlavi, being the one who supports, of course, American and Westernization of the country. Against that time, we should not forget, of course, the Cold War, against the USSR, against communism.
But even then, it wasn't in such full swing. So this explanation, this brief, very brief, it's a really very brief history and idea of Iran up to the revolution is very brief, and it gives you the idea of why the revolution happens. So we have this tyrant who's now in power. Now, one of the reasons that makes him a tyrant, one of the actions and the consistent routine of actions that he would do, that people would call him a tyrant for, is any type of opposition, be it conservative Muslim, conservative Islamic opposition, be it communist, capitalist, liberal opposition, any and all opposition are crushed and their torture is commonplace. So these types of things which unified, very interesting, this is a very interesting period of history and very interesting case study. This tyrant unified all the factions that are opposite to each other against him. They all just wanted him gone. You have the secularists, specifically the staunch, hard communists of that time, unifying hand in hand with the clergy, the Shia ulama of that time, to overthrow him. And obviously, we should not forget, because of the time period, with US support. Especially Khomeini, he had US support, he had the Western support, because this is what was happening. You have Iran under the Shah, an autocrat, which benefits US a lot, and the people knew and know and see this, and they don't like and they don't want US. So for US, they realize that they've lost Iran. But now they have to do damage control. Do they want to lose Iran fully, in that the people to replace the Shah will be loyal to the Soviets, or the people to replace the Shah will be neutral or enemies to the Soviets? And that's where they chose between the two options, communist Iranis or the Islamic Republic, the theocratic ideas. They went for the theocratic ideas. Yes, which is an important thing to note, because that the so-called monster or so-called enemy that they are claiming that Iran is a construction of their own making.
Yes.
We have that build-up, and it's a very fascinating build-up and a fascinating breakup. Then you have the revolution happens. And on what year?
1979.
In what
year?
Many
people are not aware. 1979, in what year? What happened in that year?
What year Hijri? That's 1400.
1400 Hijri.
That in Islam, there is this idea that every 100 years there's a Mujadid, a renewer. Okay, someone who renews, doesn't bring something new to Islam, just revives it, brings it back, renews it. And of all the years a revolution could have happened, it happened in that year where it's the idea of the new century, the turn of the century, who will be the new renewer, right? The new Mujadid. And well, for many people of that time, Khomeini was that, and even today,
even for Sunnis, right? We should not forget. Yes. We're talking about the Shia revolution. Yeah. It was not a Sunni revolution, and we know that the Shias have clergy. It's very close to the idea of the Catholic Church, actually. You know, you have a clerical power, you have the clergy ruling, you have them actually controlling the power until now. And Khomeini played a very revolutionary role. Supported, by the way, he was in exile in Paris. He was in exile in France, in the West, you know, and also in Hamburg, by the way. He has been to Germany. Hamburg had a very big Shia center at that time, and they closed it down recently. So yes, strangely enough, we can see that support was there. And in the end, it happened. The revolution happened in 1979, and we are now where we are. So now we are supposed to believe that Iran is a threat now. Okay, not Israel, and it's a threat for the existence of Israel, for the presence of Israel. And seeing that Israel plays the American role or the Western role in the Middle East, Of course, it's a threat to the West. It's a threat to anything that we believe in. As Western nations, hypocritically enough, of course, a threat to human rights and to women's rights and to all this nonsense that they come up with, these excuses they come up with to attack Iran and to destroy it. Now, again, we are not taking any side, neither for the one or for the other, of course. For Sunni Muslims, it's a very important thing to see that indeed this issue of Shia and Sunni is being played out. Saudi Arabia, the Sunni states in the Gulf, Emirates and Kuwait and Qatar, they all misuse the issue of Iran being a Shiite country, so that they actually take this as an excuse, okay, to say like they're a problem to us. So we rather join with the Americans, we rather join with the West against Iran because the Shiite power. We don't want that. But again, it's one of the excuses again for the Sunni countries to say it's not the problem of them being Shia, it's rather the political issue, the problem of Iran being just very strong, a very strong political enemy to Saudi Arabia and to Qatar and to Emirates and so on. So where this will lead to, that's the question. We don't really know. Of course, we never know. But it is important to understand that the Iranian Revolution was there because there was a support from the West, okay? And now they're turning it again, like they did in Afghanistan also. They're turning against the Taliban. So although they were supported before against the Soviets and against communists, now again, they're turning it towards them. I wonder, have they never learned to learn about their past mistakes, or is it something that is a plan to keep doing every time? I really wonder, subhanAllah.
It's a good question, because I take an example of the Brits, for example. They're looking for the British Empire. They have a huge swath of land, and they think that oil will be the future fuel. Okay, it will replace coal, it will be the future coal. Now, they now need to try and find oil. And where do they look to find where the oil could be? They look into their history books. They go into their history books to see which empire, which people had some sort of contact with oil, right? And what they find is within the Middle Eastern empires, they found that at nights, how they would light their streets is with oil lamps. And so that's where they set their sights first. And Iran was one of the first places that they set their sights. And that's why they came across oil. So yes, history is very important, and they use it to understand and make their decisions. Still, the question is, do they learn from it with regards to mistakes they may make? I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag.
SubhanAllah. Just maybe to summarize a little bit, why did this Iranian Revolution, why did it come about? How did it come about? We should look at Iran also before. It was not, it was a quite successful country, despite the ruler, despite the Shah being actually quite oppressive. Of course, we cannot deny that. But economically, financially, there might have been inflation. However, it was not a poor country. It was not a country, the people were not starving, and people didn't really, were not kept back from business and everything. So something was going on in Iran of that time. It was economically thriving, actually. It was quite strong. But the expenditure that went into the military power, the cooperation between the Shah and the West in such a strong way, corruption and repression, of course, the mass disappointment and anger towards the Shah and towards the regime, all this basically led to the Shia revolution, the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which until nowadays has made an impact in the region, in the country, of course, in the entire region, in the world, how people perceive and look at Shiite people, and how Shiism is considered as being a big threat to the world. The results of the revolution, we should not forget things like a massive change in the Iranian society. Although the Iranians were before Shiite Muslims, they were not practicing, if you want to call this, practicing Shiite Muslims. The government was definitely not on the side of Islam, or the Shiite Islam type of ideal. But that changes drastically. Women start covering up again, of course. They are covered nowadays. That time it was not at all the case. Okay. A huge Iranian diaspora worldwide was created, especially in North America. Okay. Los Angeles is considered, the largest Iranian city after Tehran. Okay. Massive amount of Iranian people who had to flee because they were not supporting the Iranian Revolution, were scared and took their money out. These are mainly rich Iranian opposition people who oppose the Iranian Revolution.
Yeah.
Were extremely rich.
Mostly the
And,
leftists, the secular communists. Yes.
Some of them mostly secular,
Yeah,
not even left, rather secular. I mean, extreme secular, in such a way that the only thing that counts is making money. And I've
that as well.
came across many of them in Germany, for example. There's a very big Iranian diaspora as well. Germany in Europe is actually one of the largest ones, and then the one in America, of course, the US, very, very strong, and in France. So these are the diasporas. You will find Iranian diasporas all over, and this is something that happened because of the Iranian Revolution. You will find more Iranians.
It was a brutal revolutions, as most revolutions are, and the clergy, they took a smart advantage of it. They crushed their opposition, and they removed completely the people that would, after the stabilization of the revolution, would rise up to replace or get rid of them. So that is the fact of revolution, and they're the ones who took good use of it, and who made good use of it.
So is the revolution something that would help other Muslim nations nowadays? What do you think? Is it something that Muslim nations would have to follow? Would they take this as a model, as an example?
Well, the funny thing to that question is, yes, they did take that as a model, and no, looking at the result of the Arab Spring, not necessarily,
Not necessarily.
a positive thing. I mean, for example, to take it as a model, interestingly enough, within the Iranian situation, where there was a green revolution, okay, where they tried to fight for rights for the people, rights for women, a greater expansion of rights for themselves. And how they would do it is they would go to the main part of the city where people would gather, and they would be in that place and protest. Now, when they would leave and disperse and go and have their dinner and come back the next day, or come back in the evening, they would see that the whole place was totally blocked off by police. So they had to go to the second best place. But then they would all disperse, go for dinner, come back again, that's blocked off. Third, fourth. So by the 16th best place, right, it's probably some alleyway, and they did not have enough attention from the people, and so this green revolution dissolved. It completely failed because of that. But that was a lesson for revolutions following, or protests following. And one example is the Arab Spring. Take Egypt, for example. They went to the main part of the city where people would gather, and they occupied the area day and night. They did not leave it. And that carries on to this movement that was a recent movement, right? Occupy Wall Street. Same idea. The location, and you occupy it. You're there day in, day out. So that's just an example of, yes, it is a model that people have taken and have used. Now, the results of it, good or bad, that is the question.
That is always a question, isn't it? Well, I guess we will have to see. As long as there's an Israel in the Middle East, I think there will always be tensions and problems, and the attempt of the Israeli government to create a greater Israel is always there. So with or without Iran, the attempt of Israel creating a greater Israel is there. Israel attacking its neighbors on any excuse that it could find is always there. Israel being the main nuclear power in the Middle East, feel threatened by Iran, which is another nuclear power, as well as Pakistan, by the way.